So I've been following this trend, and I haven't been tracking it, which I kind of kick myself for not doing, but the post-title fight letdown scenario. And what we've talked about in the past, and you've heard me talk about this on my show in various situations, is that a fighter, after sometimes losing the championship or losing their shot at the title by losing a title fight, doesn't perform well in their next fight. They're not as motivated. They're in a tough spot. They're looking at the fact that they have to rebuild a title contention. They are toying with the possibility that could have been their zenith of their career, and they're now in their downward trend. Either way, it's very difficult for them to get up for the next fight, while their opponent's looking at this going, this guy just fought for the title, this girl just fought for the title. If I knock them off, it's a huge opportunity for me to move up my stock, and they're motivated far greater than the other fighter is. And what we get is a flat performance on one side and maybe an overhyped performance on the other side. And a lot of times you see a fighter coming off a title fight defeat lose their next matchup. Now that we saw Darren Till defeated Kelvin Gastelum in a similar fight, we've seen it happen on a lot of occasions. You look back to Francis Ngannou when he fought and lost the title. His next fight was Derek Lewis. He fought terribly and lost a decision to Derek Lewis. A couple fighters though, Holly Holm for example, a perfect example of this. She has now been in this scenario on 4 separate occasions. And she's 3-1. She lost the first one to Valentina Shevchenko after losing her title, and then went on to win multiple fights, including last weekend's win over Raquel Pennington in that scenario. Another fighter that comes to mind who's fighting in this card is Junior Dos Santos. He has fought for the title on many occasions and had mixed results, and then come back and had a lot of success in the fight afterwards. And I think it's this veteran mindset, especially for fighters and Conor McGregor actually was technically in the same situation as well. But these guys who realize that this is not one and done for them. They've been there, they've gone to the top, they've lost, and they've worked their way back. And they think, yes, they have the confidence to do it again and again. And I think that changes the mindset. So again, I think I want to start tracking this if I have the opportunity to kind of get my shit together and see how this plays out. Nonetheless, welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we are breaking in the upcoming UFC Fight Night 166 event, or ESPN Plus 24, which will transpire on January 24th from the PNC Arena in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show, and as per usual, my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so you can check them out. I'm coming off a pretty rough start to 2020. I went 4-7. It wasn't a good night, and you look at some of the things that happened. We lost a rough split decision to get things rolling. The Macy Barber injury, Conor McGregor just blowing the doors off of Donald Cerrone. Things just did not work out in most scenarios, and it just was not a good start. That being said, the HPC profit and loss, plus 0.72 units. It's not much, but it's not a loss. The CBC, on the other hand, lost all 35 units. That's rough. Either way, we're still up. We're still up over the last little while. Several events going back to for a couple of months when I started posting them more visibly on my website. And you can buy the bet packs for $15, or you can subscribe for an amount that'll save you roughly $15 for the next 2 months. And again, we seem to be going every other right now. If you look at my record on the main page, you can see we seem to kick ass every other. So I'm looking to turn it around for this next show and continue that pattern. So if you're looking to bet and you're definitely interested in seeing what I have to say on that front, you can check out the bet packs in the bet shop. Again, just $15. Make sure you follow me on Twitter as I post as much stuff as I possibly can on there. You can follow me on Facebook as well. And please, if you are new to the channel, subscribe and click the like button, thumbs up, hit that bell to get instant notifications. And comment if you will. I always like hearing comments and people throwing their opinions out there or whatever you have to say. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. We encourage people to disagree because that's what makes this whole forum fantastic and wonderful and progressive, but do it in a respectful way. Explain to me why. Don't tell me stupid or don't call other posters stupid. Just explain in advance or why you disagree with someone's opinion. On that note, we've got 5 pretty interesting fights to break down. Let's get to our first main card prediction. Fight number 1 of the main card goes down in the UFC's light heavyweight division as the debuting Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill, undefeated at 6-0, takes on the 13-0 Serbian Darko Stosic, a product of Mirko Krokop. Now, looking at this matchup first, Stosic's coming off back-to-back losses by decision of Devin Clark and Kennedy Njoku. I can't say his name quite correctly. In that fight against Kennedy, he was probably behind, but it was close. He lost 2 points for groin strikes, which ultimately made it no way he could win that fight without a stoppage. Now for Hill, he's undefeated through 6 fights. TKO winner on the Contender Series to get the call came down last July. And he's rolling in here. He has 1 fight against a currently UFC rostered fighter, which we'll talk about momentarily. Physically, though, 6'4", he's 4 inches taller than Stosic. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage. He's actually 1 year older than the Serbian, which is hard to believe. Stosic, though, a sizable experience advantage with 16 pro fights to just 6 for Hill. Now, Hill, he's the new guy, so it's always good to look at what their record tells us just by the numbers. He has 3 wins by knockout and 3 decision victories. 2 wins in the opening round. He also has a 5-round decision over Dequan Townsend, who's fighting on the prelims. He's a UFC fighter. I wouldn't call him UFC caliber. He got called in a short notice. He hasn't had a lot of success. But nonetheless, it's somebody of decent quality. Now, when you look at it deeper into Hill's record, besides his Contender Series fight and the win over Townsend, he had 2 wins of the same fighter with a current record of 3 wins and 8 losses. And his other 2 wins that came very early in his career were over a fighter with a combined record of 0-3. 2 fighters, the combined record of 0-3. Pardon me. So not exactly amazing competition, but again, just 6 fights in. Now, when you look at him, both physically and what he does in the ring, he has a very nice blend of physical and technical gifts. He does a lot of nice things. He's a measured striker. He uses his nice kicks up and down his opponent's body, push kick, and just that very technically sound kicks, low kicks, and body kicks. He strikes long. He punched to the body and hurt his opponent's last fight, which really opened up the chance to finish that fight. Once he saw that he had injured him, he did some damage to the midsection with a clinch and knee strikes. Didn't rush, but he amped up the pressure. He pressured him, but he didn't hurry. He didn't get frantic. And he broke him down and eventually got the finish in a very methodical, impressive way without really exposing himself. I really like what I saw out of him. Now, Stosic, he has big power. He's a heavily muscled dude. He throws hard. He's a Miracle Crow Cup product, so it's not surprising to see he's got some good kicks in his arsenal. 8 wins by knockout, 8 first-round victories. Now, prior to coming to the UFC, the guy was 5-0 in fights that lasted longer than 1 round. So not a gas bag by any stretch of the imagination, but he's 0-2 in the UFC once out of the opening round. His only win over Jeremy Kimball in his debut, not exactly amazing. In his last fight, he dealt with a fighter who had a longer reach and more height than Hill will, so it's not like something he's going to be completely unfamiliar with. And being a heavy, thick, light heavyweight, he's going to usually fight guys who are longer than him, so this won't be out of the question for him to try and overcome. One of his best weapons are his low kicks. He smashes guys with low kicks, really targets that inside leg. That's probably the part of the reason he wound up getting some low blows in his last fight. That cost him. It'll be curious to see if he's a little gun shy to throw those again, or if it just wipes the slate clean and he comes out firing them. The thing I don't like about Stosic is that he's willing to go backwards. He can strike backwards, but he lets his forward, move. He lets his opponent move forward and bring that forward pressure. He'll throw a lot of single strikes, and again, when you're moving backwards and you're pot shotting and your opponent's pressing you and having a lot of success, it's not a great look with the judges. He was trying to. I think you get the feeling he's trying to pace himself. He knows that if he goes for it and doesn't get it, or just opens up and presses too hard early, he's just going to blow his load, and that'll be the end of it. And he's not going to be able to finish in those final rounds, and could get finished himself, or just will drop a decision as a result. It was interesting to see in the last fight he was going for takedowns in the final round, which is completely out of his element. And being down at the scorecards, you'd think he'd be in there swinging for the fences. So you got to question his fight IQ a little bit. Overall, his style is not ideal when you can't get the finish. And on the regional scene, if you can just go in there and smash guys, absolutely go for it. But if you can't get guys out of there at this level, you're going to struggle tremendously with his approach to fighting. If he does have the cardio issues, we could hypothetically believe he has based on what we've seen out of him. The inexperience could be a factor for Hill. The debut is certainly going to could be an issue here, but he has a lot of gifts, and it's hard to overlook what he brings to the cage. Look for him to stretch this fight out, stay very active, pressure Stosic against the cage, but not really open himself up to taking damage, land more volume, work his own set of kicks. I wouldn't be shocked to see him try and land a takedown or two, or just clinch and make Stosic work. And my prediction is Jamahal Hill to defeat Darko Stosic by decision. Up next in the women's strawweight division, Angela Overkill Hill, former Invicta champion, the current record of 10 wins and 7 losses, takes on the 9-3 Hannah Shockwave Cifers in a very important fight for both girls. Obviously, that's kind of, redundant. It's a fight. It's fucking important for the two people involved in it. But you know what I mean? It's one of those fights that could be a turning point for either girl. Cifers lost her debut to Macy Barber, but has since won back-to-back, including an upset of Polyana Viana, which I correctly predicted, and then defeated Jody Escobel. For Hill, she can have a TKO victory over Ariane Carnellosi. My apologies. She had lost 3 or 4 prior to that defeat. Now, Hill is 2 inches taller, so a 2-inch reach advantage, and she is 7 years older than Cifers. She's actually coming in. Angela's coming in on short notice, replacing Brianna Van Buren, who stepped out. She actually has a month to prep for this fight, so it's not like it's super short notice, and she's done this in the past. Now, Cifers is scrappy. She competed against Barber in a fairly competitive back-and-forth bout until the finish. She did a decent job defending Polyana Viana and forcing her out of her comfort zone. She did get outlanded 77-67 in that fight, but she did enough to win that matchup, obviously in 2 judges' eyes. Against Escobar, who's really struggled at UFC, she's clearly not UFC level. She gave up a trio of takedowns, but outworked her on the feet. That was the key to her success. She has a nice job of mixing in her kicks. She comes from a Muay Thai striking background. She has a nice job of mixing in her kicks fairly effectively. Both fights, her 2 victories, they've been a key aspect, and that could be the essential aspect of her success here if she can slow Angela Hill down by battering the lower half of her. Now, Hill, her volume has been super impressive in the UFC. In 4 of her 5 UFC victories, she's landed 90-plus strikes. I think she's landed 100-plus strikes in 3 of those wins. She would have landed over 100 in their last fight until it got shut down when she cut her opponent and the fight ended. She's gone over 100 significant strikes on 5 occasions, again, winning 3 of those. And again, she would have gone over in the last fight, so those numbers would be even higher. Now, her defensive game, again, it's a tale of 2 situations here. Her defensive game is a question mark because her opponents are able to land a lot on her in her defeats, but it also shows the lengths they've got to go to and the stats they have to pile up in order to defeat her. In her last 4 UFC fights to go the distance in which she did not win, her opponents have had to put up big striking numbers. If you look at these stats here, in those defeats, they required 94 significant strikes and 1 takedown, 111 significant strikes and 1 takedown, 143 significant strikes, and 131 significant strikes and 2 takedowns. All of her opponents had to put up big numbers in order to beat her. Can Cifers replicate those stats? Versus Vienna, she had a couple of big strikes to hurt her in that split decision victory. And it would be it'd be fairly easy to argue that she'd land those big moment techniques where she was able to hurt her. She probably doesn't get the nod in that matchup. Now, Hill's movement creates a lot of issues for fighters. She does a good job of sticking and moving in her last fight. For the most part, she effectively dealt with her opponent's pressure and power punching. They were moving forward. She didn't take a lot of damage in that matchup. Now, Cifers can crack, and I think she's a little more diverse than the last girl Angela faced, but I see her struggling to reach Hill. Hill has that height and reach advantage, and when you couple that with volume and you couple that with her movement, especially that lateral movement on the outside, you give Cifers the edge in power, but if you're not in a position to deploy that power, it really doesn't matter. Hill has found success at times with takedowns, 1 or 2 here or there, and Cifers has been taken down, including 3 times in the last fight. And we could see Angela look to augment that, push her into the cage, try and pull her base out and put her on the mat, even just to make her think about it and say, hey, look, this is an option on the table. You better be ready to defend it, especially if you're going to be the striking-based fighter. I'm going to be the more diverse fighter. I think Angela, as a veteran fighter, does a lot more, does more in this fight. Look for her to land in that 100, 110 strike range, where Cifers is somewhere between 60 and 70. A couple key takedowns worked in for Hill as well. And my prediction is Angela Hill to defeat Hannah Cifers by decision. The rebirth of the flyweight division continues as the 10th ranked Jordan Espinosa, 14-5-0 with 1 no contest, takes on number 11 Alex Perez with a current record of 22 wins and 5 defeats. Now, Perez is looking to establish himself as a future contender. He has wins in 9 of his last 10. He's 4-1 in the UFC, the only loss in that stretch against potentially the next champion, Joseph Benavidez. For Espinosa, he's coming off a loss to Matt Schnell. He had won 5-0, including his UFC debut. Both guys are 5'6", 4-inch reach advantage for Espinosa. Perez is the younger fighter by 3 years. Now, Espinosa simply made a mistake against Schnell. I had Schnell to win that fight. I was actually quite happy with the result. He got caught in a submission and got tapped out. In his debut, he utilized a lot of movement very effectively in and out, side to side, work to draw his opponent's offense out, was able to capitalize on that. He put up some decent volume, 40 significant strikes, a little bit more than 40 significant strikes, but really benefited from a lack of aggression from his adversary, who, didn't really press forward and force the issue. On his contender series, he was landing strikes while moving backwards, landed some takedowns as well, and did a decent job just mixing up his offense. Now, when you look at his style, you'd think guy could have some knockouts mixed in. But he only has 2 wins by knockout compared to 7 submission wins, so he's got a guy who's had some success on the ground. Now, when you look at Alex Perez, he actually fought Eric Shelton in his debut, who Espinosa beat in his debut. He got outlanded by Shelton in that fight, was able to capitalize with 5 takedowns and earned a decision victory. Perez had that big, impressive UFC performance, taking out Shorty Torres in the opener with 84 significant strikes in a fight they just went off. Under 4 minutes, 84 significant strikes. That was crazy, leading to a knockout. He was crazy aggressive. He ate a lot of shots, put up a pace that had been hard to maintain for 3 rounds. It'd been interesting to see how that fight would have gone if it kept going. He hurt his opponent on several occasions. He got cracked multiple times, and eventually he outwilled him when it came down to it. Now, when he fought Benavidez, it was the opposite. He was very measured, very paced, and he kind of got dinged up, and he almost got finished twice with that really bullshit. I think it was Eve Levine diving in when he shouldn't have, which raises some questions about his durability. Was there some impact in the previous fight taking so much damage? I don't know. Ultimately, in his last matchup, though, against Mark De La Rosa, he went back to a wrestling-heavy offense. He's a very good wrestler. And he took him down, he controlled him, he rode him out, he landed some big strikes, and just overall was a very strong performance from him. Now, both guys, interestingly enough, have 3 losses by submission on their record, which accounts for over 50% of their losses, which tells us that they are vulnerable on the mat, and there's a very good chance this fight could end there. Perez's forward pressure and aggression, I think they're going to work against the backward motion of Espinosa, who does have a reach advantage, and if he can strike going backwards, he could tee off and land all game, all fight, and possibly even score a knockout. But again, I don't like that style and the reliance on having to hit that one-hitter quitter or a big fight-changing shot. Look for Perez to continue to grow and utilize his tools effectively. He's going to land takedowns, he's going to put Espinosa on his back, he's going to set up some top control, he's just going to grind him out. Espinosa's movement is a key aspect of his approach. I don't think he blends it that well with his overall game, and I think it becomes a bit of a less important factor as the fight goes on. Maybe drains his cardio a little bit. I think Perez eventually gets in a position to finish him on the mat, and my prediction is Alex Perez to defeat Jordan Espinosa by... We'll go by the numbers and say submission. In the co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's welterweight division as former lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos, currently ranked 5th in the division, 29-11-0, takes on the fellow former lightweight Michael Maverick Chiesa, currently holding a record of 15 wins and 4 losses. Now, as I said, a pair of former lightweights not competing at welterweight anymore to make their cuts easier, to improve their performances by not being as draining on the body, and it seems so far to be working for both of them. Now, Chiesa is coming off back-to-back fights versus Carlos Condit and Diego Sanchez. And several years ago, those have been 2 impressive victories. It's still nice to see how he had success here and really dominated both. He submitted Condit. He had lost back-to-back fights before, again, to Kevin Lee and Anthony Pettis in those matchups. For RDA, at welterweight since 2017. Hard to believe he's been at welterweight for well over 2 years, going into his 3rd year. 4-3 overall. And you look at the guys he's fought. Robbie Lawler, Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Kevin Lee, Leon Edwards, all top guys. He's fought impressive opponents in this division with mixed results, but still, he's a world-class, world champion level fighter, and he's competing every night with those guys. Physically, Chiesa 5 inches taller, 5 inch reach advantage. He's 3 years younger. RDA, 41 career fights, a lot of mileage on him. That's just 24 Chiesa. Both fighters are southpaw as well, which is worth noting. Now, Chiesa's taken all of his opponents down to the ground, but one, which was Kevin Lee. In his welterweight bouts, 9 takedowns over 2 fights, which tells us, again, that maybe he was physically diminished and didn't feel like he could push his takedown game as effectively as he can now that he's not cutting that extra 15 pounds. When you look at his record, he is 5-2 when landing 2 or more takedowns. He is 3-0 when he lands 3 or more. He's got that strong submission game. He's good at smothering his opponents and riding them out. That deadly back mount with a very solid rear naked choke, which he's very good at finishing opponents with. Now, RDA is coming off a 4-pack of fights in which he gave up a lot of takedowns. 28 takedowns over his last 4 matchups, and he went 1-3 in that stretch. Only one in that stretch came in round 4 against Kevin Lee, in a fight he was probably losing, and I had RDA, I felt he was behind, and he got the submission once Lee got tired. Now, you look at the Brazilian here. He is 3-6 when giving up at least 2 takedowns in a fight. And you look at those 3 wins, he had a very narrow and controversial decision victory over Evan Dunham at home in Brazil, and then a stoppage win of Jason High, who was making his divisional debut, and then the win over Kevin Lee. So they've been all suspects in the situation. So you can see, when RDA is facing an opponent who can take him down, he is in a tough situation. He is a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's an incredibly capable grappler in his own right, but he's always had issues with these guys who are a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and will positionally control him, and that's what he has to be mindful of here. His opponents, we saw Usman do it, we saw Covington do it, we've seen other guys do it, press him into the cage, make him work hard, score takedowns, keep driving, and simply outdog him. Can Chiesa replicate those issues that RDA's had in the past? There's a very good potential that he could. His pressure and transition game against Diego Sanchez was impressive, didn't let up. Sanchez, despite all of his issues, is a very good grappler in his own right. He's very difficult to control, and Chiesa dominated him. RDA needs to maintain that gap. Land low kicks, land body kicks, throw combos, move around, move lateral. He's had success in the past dealing with some pressure, and the guys are going to come out and throw at him and be all over him. But again, at the same time, he's not in his element when his opponent closes that gap. If this was a 5-round fight, I like RDA to win at least 1 round of the first 3, and then take over in the last 2 if Chiesa gasses himself out. But I think Chiesa's length and grinding style is going to be a problem for Dos Anjos here. If Dos Anjos can't get himself off the wall, can't create separation, can't get up off his... even if he gets taken down, unless Chiesa just gasses hard, I think he has the ability to grind this fight out, score points with what he does well and what RDA struggles with. Dos Santos has to win this fight by constantly landing while Chiesa comes forward, and that's not going to be easy, especially if Chiesa can get his hands on him. Chiesa wins this fight with forward pressure, controlling him on the cage, landing takedowns, mixing in some strikes. There's a lot of avenues to victory here. Chiesa's frame has more benefits moving to welterweight. He's very tall, he's very long, and then he puts a little bit of extra weight and muscle on it, makes him that much more effective. RDA is a little undersized. I think Chiesa continues to find success. I think RDA's, he's fought a lot of top guys. I think he's got a lot of mileage. It's starting to show up. That rub of being a former champion is still keeping people very mindful of what he's capable of. But I think this is Michael Chiesa's fight here, and my prediction is Michael Chiesa to defeat Rafael dos Anjos by decision. And finally, we move to the main event of the evening. We're in the UFC's heavyweight division as the third-ranked Curtis Razor Blaydes, 11-2-0 with 1 no contest, takes on the former champion, the fourth-ranked Junior Cigano dos Santos, with a current record of 21 wins, 5 losses. Blaydes, he's trying to rebuild himself into title contention. This could be the fight with a victory that gets him there. He had back-to-back wins over Justin Willis and Shamil Abdurrahimov after that loss to Francis Ngannou. He needs Stipe to be the champion. He doesn't want Ngannou. He's 0-2 against Francis, so he doesn't want Ngannou winning the title eventually down the road. He needs Stipe to be the champion, or I don't know if Cormier could be if Cormier's probably going to retire, so I think Stipe is the ideal matchup for Blaydes, if anyone, at least to get himself a shot at the title. They could throw him back in there with Ngannou, seeing as the last fight ended so quickly. Now, JDS is coming off a loss to the aforementioned Predator. He had won 3 in a row and 4 of 5 with the title fight loss mixed in against Stipe. He's looked very, very good. Okay, very, very good. He's looked better in recent outings. Physically, both guys 6'4". Blaydes nearly 30 pounds heavier than Junior, which could be good thing, could be a bad thing. 3-inch reach advantage for Razor Blaydes, and he is 7 years younger. Now, this is your wrestler versus striker. Of course, neither guy is just one or the other, but this is what we can break it down to. It's a wrestler versus striker. Blaydes wants his fight on the mat. Junior wants his fight standing. If this fight's contested to the feet, the percentages suggest Junior wins. If it's contested on the mat, we're going to assume Blaydes wins. Now, Blaydes has taken down all but 2 of his UFC opponents. In those 2 fights, he's 1-1. That's worth noting. When you look at his numbers, big takedown numbers. Abdurrahimov, 5 takedowns. Willis, 7 takedowns, 4 against Overeem, 10 versus Mark Hunt. He had 2 in his debut loss to Francis Ngannou, but couldn't hold him down. 0 in his knockout loss against Francis Ngannou. So the question is, can he take Junior down? Junior's got 80% takedown defense. He's difficult to take down. In the second Kane meeting, Kane landed 11 takedowns. That's the most anyone's landed against him. In the third Kane meeting, Kane went 3 for 13. When Stipe, in the first Stipe engagement, which went the full 5 rounds, Stipe landed 1 takedown on 18 attempts. Junior is not easy to take down. And Curtis is a very good wrestler. But is he a good enough MMA wrestler to take Junior down? That's a great question. And if Blaydes can keep him down, or take him down, can he keep him down? And can he not exhaust himself with the diminishing point of returns, where that first takedown lands and he can't keep him down, he gets tired. Second takedown, he's more tired. Third takedown's not as effective, and by the time we get to the end of the first round, Blaydes might have won the round, but he's looking at 4 more rounds, 20 minutes, against an opponent who's probably a little bit fresher than he is. Again, that's debatable. We'll talk about it. Against Shamil, I like the way he punched he punched a couple, he threw some a combination, and he shot low, got underneath those combinations. Once he was able to get in very tight control, couldn't hold him down in that first attempt, but he will shoot and lock up his opponent's body and then almost rotate to the back and force them face first. That's like a technique that they're not necessarily, expecting. You're expecting someone to try and drive through your hips or take your balance out from underneath of you. Instead, they're going to hook you up and drive you forward and put you on your face. Once he's on the mat, very effective at wearing you down, rides the back, forces you to carry their weight. He'll actually isolate a leg. He'll triangle one of your legs and kind of put his weight on it. Hard to stand up when you got a 260-pound man on your leg. He'll land strikes, waits for you to make a mistake and get desperate, and he will move into a dominant position, look for mounts, and with that ground and pound. Now, even if he can't hold JDS down, the question is the threat of the takedown going to be too much for the Brazilian to overcome and engage at the rate he needs to? Could the takedowns tire out Junior dos Santos? There's always that possibility. Cain Velasquez tired him out by just simply shooting for takedowns and forcing him to work hard. Could Blaydes do that same thing? When he fought Mark Hunt, he had trouble keeping him down. He got hurt in the feet, and that certainly showed he's vulnerable. Francis Ngannou hurt him as well, so it suggests that if Francis Ngannou hits a fucking train, that train's going to get, stank-legged. But if anybody, if Junior is able to stay vertical, he has the punching power to replicate those problems. Junior has excellent balance. He does a good job of raising his opponent's level once they get in. He gets his back to the cage, which is a nice technique to avoid that extra pressure. And again, if he can get his back to the cage when Blaydes likes to try and get to the back and force you down, that's going to limit those opportunities. And Junior's very good at disengaging, almost limp-legging, and he'll fucking run away. It doesn't look good, but it creates that scenario you want: separation, distance, and then go back to game plan A, which is striking. Now, his takedown defense really hasn't been tested in a while. with age, has he become a little bit slower, a little less capable of staying on his feet? That's a great question. Now, his punching power is certainly there, but he's become more of a patient striker, which has both been a blessing and a curse. It makes him less aggressive, which makes him less effective at times, but it also makes him less vulnerable to defense and can allow him or less vulnerable to offense and allow him to be more defensive and land shots effectively without opening himself up. He works that jab very effectively to the head and the body. It throws opponents off when he does that. He has some nice kicks to the midsection, and he was throwing some nice low kicks before Ngannou caught him and took him out. Throwing some very nice low kicks, which I think could be a very effective tool against a wrestler. He's a strong base to do what he wants to do. Now, Junior has been stopped 4 times in his career. Kane stopped him. Stipe stopped him. Ngannou stopped him. Overeem stopped him. 3 of those came on the feet. Kane's was like the exhaustion, ground and pound. I don't know if Blaydes can stop him on the feet. I don't know if Blaydes can take him down. We'll see. Can Blaydes catch him standing during a scramble? Possibly. Can he do what Kane did to wear him down for TKO? I think Blaydes would be just as likely to be tired in that situation and maybe tire out quicker as the heavier man. That's the situation. With Junior being lighter and quicker, if Blaydes can't get him in a position where he can dominate for those first couple of rounds and get him out of there, completely exhaust him, he will tire out quicker, you would think, over 3 rounds. He's probably got some decent cardio, but it's not Kane level at his peak. JDS needs to keep his back off the cage in the sense that once he's disengaged from... I said before it was good because it prevents Curtis from rotating his back to the cage, or rotating to Junior's back and getting him down. But once he's disengaged, he needs to get away. He has a tendency to linger a little bit too long, and that allows his opponents to really throw at a very stationary target, which is hard to defend. And that's something he needs to be very mindful of in this fight. But I think the key for Junior here is to go back to what he's been doing effectively. He did it against several opponents. We saw him do it against Big Ben Rothwell. We saw him do it... Sorry, just looking quickly at his record again. We saw him do it against Derek Lewis. We saw him do it against Tai Tuivasa, against Blagoy Ivanov. He simply was able to keep distance and be the better, more effective striker. Jab, jab, jab. Maintain distance with jabs. Work those low kicks in again. Be mindful to leave them hanging too long, but again, utilize them where necessary. I think Junior can outpoint him. Blaydes will slow down in a 5-round fight if he can't knock him out. Junior's not easy to get out of there, and I think a lot of people are writing him off because of what happened with Francis. I'm not ready to write him off just yet. I think this is a good matchup for him, even though he's the underdog. I think he outworks Blaydes, forces Blaydes to strike more than he wants to, and I don't think Curtis is quite there yet. And the knockout is possible, especially later in the fight. But my prediction, I think we're going to see Junior Dos Santos put up a pretty good performance, is Junior Dos Santos to defeat Curtis Blaydes by decision. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 166. Don't say I cherry pick. Don't say I pick all the favorites. I just picked 2 pretty big underdogs to wrap up the card. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You can check them out. I'm not willing to just sit back and take all the easy layups. I got to find edges. And the thing with my picks, and again, if you're new to my videos, you'll find this out. If you are a longtime listener, you already know this. Even if I'm wrong, you can see how I came to the conclusions I came to. You can see what I said to justify my picks. You can go back and you can say, yeah, I understand that. And even if it doesn't change your opinion, even if it doesn't change the way you think of the fight, at least you can see some logic behind my pick. I'm not just picking this guy or that guy and then hoping that shit happens. So I'm hoping a lot of you if you're on Curtis Razor Blaydes, you're at least debating right now and looking at some of the validity of my comments. And if I'm right, great. If I'm wrong, well, all the power to you. Nonetheless, thank you very much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun. 2020 is off and rolling. We're hoping to let's make this the official start of 2020 when it comes to predictions. We'll get things started here. The bet packs again will be for sale. Follow me at KO_predictions on Twitter. There's a link in the description below. Subscribe to me here on YouTube. Like the video, all that fun stuff. And I'm hoping in the not too distant future to hit 3,000 followers. I got to be getting close. I haven't looked in a little bit. But thanks for tuning in, guys. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you back here after the bell. Hi.